Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
Do you like organic fair trade coffee? Do you appreciate a well-made pour-over, but just don't have time for all the rigmarole of setup, cleanup, and brew time? Reach for Mount Hagen Coffee. When you want that artisanal flavor, but don't have time for all the bullshit. Mount Hagen Coffee, brought to you by Airey Bros Radio.
Whether on top of a 14er or the Airey Bros need a pick-me-up after the daily challenge, Airey Bros reach for Honey Bunches. Honey Bunches, the peanut pecan honey bar with over 42% of pure honey in each and every bar. Honey Bunches is gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free. Honey Bunches is family-owned and operated here in the great state of Colorado since 2013. Go to honeybunches.com and use the promo code ABR1512 for a 10% discount on the boys of 1512. Once again, that is promo code ABR1512 at honeybunches.com.
You would say anything about vaccines and it immediately gets an emotional reaction and people get upset. I mean, it was like 9/11 back in the day. 9/11 was a very similar topic. Every time you brought it up, some super patriotic person was going to be like, no, our government would never do that. Still, he's thrown out the first pitch. It's crazy.
I wouldn't call that a pitch.
Yeah, I hear it. Good point. Yeah. But if my friend was wearing some stupid shirt or hat and we're going out, I wouldn't just say, yeah, you look great, dude. Like, I'd be like, hey, Kevin, like, take off that fucking hat. Like, you look ridiculous. You know, like, I think sometimes people justify being rude by saying, oh, I'm just being honest. No, you're being a dick. Like, my son, he eats bunless burgers because I eat bunless burgers. He just thinks that's how you're supposed to eat a hamburger. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, so recently we've been watching the All or Nothing documentary on the Hotspurs. And then we've been, we watched, what else have we been watching? We watched a lot of WWE stuff because the kids love WWE.
You just entered my wheelhouse, dog.
This is Ricky Varandas, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
What's up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, episode 74 with Ricky Varandas of the Ripple Effect podcast. You ready, Prince?
Locked and loaded, ready to give the fans of Airey Bros Radio some hard facts.
Yeah, Ricky is a friend of Pat Miletich, Charlie Robbins, Sam Tripoli, and they've been doing this swapcast that has turned into this meetup called the Union of the Unwanted, and it's a lot of alternative media, alternative thinkers, truth seekers, and they do a podcast every other Monday, and Ricky has the Ripple Effect podcast and has a lot of similar stuff as to what we're doing. So when we find a guest that we like, I get my producer on the job. He makes it happen. We get the guest, and here we are. We have a conversation with Ricky, talking about being a parent in Massachusetts under the current situation, vaccinations. I mean, we talk about some conspiracy theories. We even talked about WWE. I didn't know that was coming in, but made your day, didn't it, dog?
Hell yeah, you saw me light up and go, man, I wish we had a whole another 2 hours to talk pro wrestling. But yeah, this is a great podcast. Ricky is a smart, insightful guy, and gives us a lot of facts and just gives us a lot of places to go look and search things. So yeah, this was a great podcast, Richie Rich, and I'm glad you suggested to reach out to Ricky. And it's always awesome when we reach out to someone and get them on and we have a great conversation like we did here today.
Yeah, great dude. East Coast through and through by way of Portugal. Check out the Ripple Effect podcast. Check out the Union of the Unwanted podcast. and go and give our sponsors some love. Go get some Mount Hagen coffee. Go get some honey bunches. And yeah, that's all I got. You got anything else, dog?
Rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us that 5-star review. Follow us on Instagram at Airey Bros. And as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512.
I think some of the craziest conspiracy theories, regardless how crazy they are, there's some elements of truth there, and that's why they stay alive. Even if there's dots there, they might be very far from each other and they're connecting them anyways, but there's usually something there. And even when you seem to research the craziest of conspiracy theories, you actually learn a little bit. I mean, because there's those elements of truth, there's some historical story you've never heard of, or some connections with some people or companies that you've never heard of there. So I think like I said, I think I'm very open-minded with everything. I mean, I think the flat earth thing is a little over the top. I mean, I like the idea of it being like the craziest lie ever. Like, you think about it, like if they could pull that off, then it'd be insane. It'd be the greatest lie ever. But it does seem like there's an element of spirituality with it too. Like it seems like you go down that flat earth rabbit hole and eventually you lead into spirituality and possibly the elite being satanic or anti-religion and not wanting us to believe there's more or whatever. I mean, there seems like a lot of other factors that go into maybe some people believing it. But I guess that's the case with a lot of things. I've had people on my show that are like James Perloff. He's actually from Boston, from Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And he, I had him on to talk about geopolitics and history, but he's written books on Darwin, his issues with Darwin and his theories and stuff like that. And so it does seem like there's a lot of Christians and Catholics and people who are a little bit religious who seem to be very, I don't know, just they have big platforms and they don't talk about religion, but so I agree with them just about everything, and but they just happen to be Christians, or they happen to be, and I think a little bit of that maybe is a motivation. I don't always see it as a bad thing. I think that in some cases, believing that good exists means that you also believe that evil exists, and that's one of the reasons why they're so outspoken and willing to go over and beyond to fight back. Where some other people might just be like, oh, well, whatever, ignorance is bliss. Let me just go on with my everyday lives. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, we are also recovering Catholics, and so it took us a long time to get away from religion, and then to realize that there's a big difference between spirituality and religion, and now like to look at ourselves as being spiritual people. But one of the things talking about all the different rabbit holes that one can go down, there's so many different holes that people can go down, and I've heard you mention it a couple times, where it's like if you're into flat earth, but you also are anti-mask or whatever, like there's all these different kind of infighting that goes on. And I think I've heard you mention it, and I thought it was kind of made me scratch my head a little bit when Dr. Shiva and Robert Kennedy Jr. were kind of like going back and forth at one another. And I was like, wait, aren't we on the same team here? Aren't we here for the greater good? Why are we like taking jabs at one another? So it seems like, depending on what you believe in or what wormholes you go down, like there's even like segregation or infighting amongst the truth seekers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I had Dr. Kendra Becker on and Nancy Gabberty and then Tim James from the Health Hero podcast, and he also has the company called Chemical Free Body.
Yeah.
I might have messed that up. Yeah, but we were talking about that. We're discussing that, and I mean, I think it was probably a little bit more politically motivated. Robert Kennedy Jr., he has no reason. I mean, he doesn't need more fame. He doesn't need this vaccine fight and be lumped in with, the conspiracy theorists and the rest of people who are outspoken with vaccines. I mean, he really has I don't see any incentive in him doing it. I think Dr. Chiva, that was one of the things. It seemed like he was saying that his heart was in the right place, is kind of questioning his moral compass or whatnot. But the vaccine debate is just one of those things where like you lose regardless if you win, because the media has done such a great job of lumping in vaccine or people who question vaccines, which seems like a pretty logical, I don't know, just something that it seems harmless. And they lump them in with like flat earthers, or lump them in with, David Icke reptilian people. Like it literally, like it's all lumped in, or like Q people. And I'm like, no, like none of these things are related. I mean, I remember not debating, but getting little arguments with people online during the COVID lockdown. And you would say anything about vaccines and it immediately gets emotional reaction and people get upset. I mean, it was like 9/11 back in the day. 9/11 was a very similar topic where you could not discuss it in a civil way, because every time you brought it up, some super patriotic person was going to be like, no, our government would never do that, and whatnot. And vaccines is kind of the same thing. But the thing is, really, the people who should be passionate and are passionate are the people who have vaccine injured children. I mean, I know many of them, and I mean, I've done work or had them on, and I've helped them out with some things. The CT Freedom Alliance, the two founders are parents of vaccine injured children, and many of the people who are on the front lines fighting back are these people. The Vax documentary, Polly, I think her name was Polly Molly, she's from the UK. She has a vaccine injured child. She was one of the people who helped with the film, and was I think they might have talked about her in the film, or in many documentaries they talk about her and her family and what they went through and whatnot. So like those are people who should be passionate. When somebody who's pro-vaccine gets upset or gets really tensed up about the topic, I don't get it. I don't know what you're saying. Like, we should be pro-vaccine. And then you have this thing now where like a lot of people are now questioning things because it's like, oh, I live in Massachusetts, and people are like, oh no, not a mandatory flu vaccine, to go to school. That's kind of bullshit or whatever. And I'm just like, wait. Like, you do realize like it's just as bullshit as any mandatory vaccine to go to school. Like, they're just adding one more to the many your kid has to take before going to school. Like, why is the flu vaccine where you draw the line? I didn't get that. I think a lot of people just didn't put into terms, or didn't really understand that, like, hey, they're kind of all mandatory to go to school. Like, there was no vaccine that wasn't really mandatory. Like, there's a bunch of vaccines that are mandatory to go to school. So you're just adding one more to that list. And yet people were acting like, oh my God, now they're mandating vaccines to go to school. It's like, no, they've been doing that. And I just think now people are more aware of the issues. I think more people are questioning the safety of it. And you guys are athletes. I mean, I play sports. I'm Portuguese, so I had to play soccer when I was a kid, and then I got into like skateboarding and BMXing, and I played in a metal band. So I just did everything that was kind of anti-Portuguese, and eventually I got into basketball, and now I still play a little pickup soccer from time to time. But basketball is really the sport that I love and play the most. And what the hell was my point? Oh, I was saying, well, just understanding the human body, like, we understand, like, you take a supplement, I take a supplement, it reacts differently. You might have great success with something, and I take it like, oh no, that thing's overhyped, that pre-workout doesn't work that well, or whatever. I have more success with. So my point is, like, you give anybody or you give everybody the same thing, everybody's not going to react to it the same way. So logically, you give everybody the same vaccine with the same ingredients, the same preservatives, the same virus, they're not going to react the same. So why is that a controversial statement? Why is that controversial? But if I said, hey, if I give everybody peanut butter, some are going to die, that's not controversial. Like, that's not, like, nobody gets mad if I say peanut butter can be dangerous to some people. But if I say vaccines are dangerous to some people, it's like, whoa, hey, that's, it's been proven. It's like, no, it hasn't been proven. And just scientifically, it wouldn't make any logical sense if you said that I give everybody the exact same cocktail of ingredients, everybody's going to have the exact same reaction. It doesn't make any sense. And so I think with this lockdown, there's been some good things that have come out of it in regards to people being much more. I think people are much more aware of the Bill Gates thing. You know, like even I did not know how many tentacles he had in so many different things, from media to big pharma to, you know, I knew that he was linked to some vaccine agenda things, and he was linked to some other things, but his pull all over the world is unbelievable. You know, what's his name? Mickey Willis, who did the Plandemic documentary. He talked about how one issue, and I forget in what country, that he talked about in the documentary, they literally scrubbed it from the internet. Like, you can't find an article about these vaccines harming people. And he's like, he had to go to like the government of the country to get, you know, confirmation that this incident existed or whatnot. And but that's the thing, like, it's the censorship thing is a huge deal. You know, I've had Zach Voorhees, who's kind of the familiar and popular Google whistleblower, worked for YouTube. It was an engineer, and he came out and he said, you know, all these terms were on the blacklist. Like, you couldn't Google, you know, vaccines or cancer cures or alternative cures or whatever it may be in that realm of alternative medicine and health without just being force fed the mainstream media articles and completely hidden away all the other things. And I remember when I first got it, not even way before I first got in the podcast, when I was first getting into just alternatives views to everything from history to health to whatever it may be, it wasn't that hard to find just people who had just alternative views on things. You know, you go down some rabbit hole and next you'd be like, oh, this is pretty cool. I've never heard of this guy's work. This guy's a really interesting researcher or whatever. And now it's impossible. You do your own independent research. It takes a lot of time to find some articles that you know exist, find some documentaries you know exist, some stuff that you know is there, you've seen it, and you can Google the exact same term or title of the article the way you remembered it, and it's just not there. And so it's just, I think censorship, and it's a huge issue. People in the vaccine domain, or I guess just health domain, has seen this happen and kind of could foresee this happening because they were censored more than anybody for some reason. I don't know if it was the power of big pharma or just because it was a conspiracy theory that people could kind of believe, like this idea that big pharma was you know, our chemical companies were killing us with their pesticides, and they were killing us by pushing, you know, their pill pushers and getting us away from any research or any alternative view on, you know, possibly looking at nutrition or looking at vitamins or supplementing with you know, minerals or whatnot to help just help your health in general. And that was like pseudoscience, this idea that your doctor will tell you that eating healthier will help your health, but yet, like, if you talk about it actually using it as a therapy to prevent or cure anything, he looks at you like you're crazy. And or you talk about vitamins and he says they don't work. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of issues with vitamin companies, you know, with lying about what's in there or the just ingredients sucking or whatnot. And but they're, you know, if eating healthy can help your health and eating shitty can hurt you, then taking vitamins is really only logically thinking it should only help if you're getting good quality stuff and if you can figure out what you need more of or whatnot. I mean, just recently I shared an article about Dr. Fauci admitting on a recent interview that vitamin D and vitamin C can help fight the virus, and yet months ago people who were saying the same thing were getting stripped off YouTube, Facebook, Twitter for saying the exact same thing. And it's like, and people are like, oh, that's pseudoscience or whatever. You know, it's like big pharma has such a hold on what's going on in the world. It's crazy. I mean, growing up, it was geopolitics was the thing that scared us the most. It was, you know, our wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, those were the big issues. And those were the things that really motivated me personally. And now it's gotten to the point where just like, you know, the military industrial complex like doesn't seem like it's having nearly a effect on our everyday life as much as the big pharma agenda. You know, it seems like that is getting into our personal lives, into our children's lives. I mean, it's affecting everything where, you know, it's scary because the thing about wars sometimes it's hard to get people to care because you get your sport, you make dinner, you go out to eat. It doesn't really affect your everyday life that much. But the thing about, you can be in a war. Oh, we're in Syria now. Well, it doesn't affect me that much. Well, but the thing about this issue is that it's affecting people's health from, wearing masks, which I think can't be healthy. And I know there's studies, but you can find any study that conflicts against another study. And, it's like you kind of just have to look at everything and decide for yourself. But breathing in what you breathe out for long periods of time cannot be a healthy thing. I mean, you think about it, the reason why you breathe heavy when you're running or doing, athletic things, it's because you need more oxygen and you're preventing yourself from getting that. So just logically, it doesn't sound like it makes sense. And I promise it's the last time I say logically. And, but yeah, and then you look at the vaccine thing. Now it's affecting our children. People are becoming much more aware about like mandating vaccines and all these topics that I think a lot of people, like I said, were either oblivious to or thought that it was more smoke than fire, are now becoming much more aware that these are big issues. And if somebody doesn't fight back, if people don't say something, if people don't resist in some way, it's just, it's just going to keep seeping into our personal lives. And next thing you know, you're not going to have any say on your health or body or whatnot. It's just that meme going around, like if you quarantine, or if you tell healthy people, or if you tell sick people to stay at home, then it's quarantining. If you tell healthy people to stay home, it's tyranny, and it's kind of true. I mean, this idea that like everybody had to stay home and businesses were lost, alcoholism went up, domestics went up. It caused so much anxiety and depression for people because they didn't know what to believe, what was going on. And yet there's just article after article and evidence after evidence that it was all based in bullshit. I can swear on this, right?
Oh yeah.
I should have asked.
We're from Jersey.
Oh, so you're East Coasters, like
yeah,
we are.
heck yeah.
So yeah, we can't help but swear if we're from the East Coast. It's just like a part, but it is one of those things where just like, there's evidence and evidence. Like, you have one day you have an article that says that, these tests give, a ridiculous amount of false positives. Then you have another article that says that these tests were contaminated. Then you have another, story like, these fishermen that went out to sea for 35 days, came back and they all tested positive, but they tested negative before they went out to sea. Like, all these stories, people who are waiting in line to get tested, who get out of line because they're waiting too long. And then next thing you know, they're getting positive test results in the mail. Like there's story after story. There's Fauci being questioned about the protests / riots, if they could have helped the spread of the virus. And he's like tiptoeing around answering the question and trying to avoid answering the question because he's much more political than people like to think he is. I mean, the thing is, we put these people who wear white jackets on this pedestal. We put everybody, politicians, attorneys, police officers, everybody's on this pedestal where it's just like, if you wear this uniform, then your moral compass is better than mine. Then this person would not lie. This person, and everybody is capable of being corrupt. Everybody is capable of having other agendas, and taking things personally or having some personal agenda or taking money or whatever. So like, these are just human flaws, and it doesn't matter what you decide to do as a career, like you're still capable of being flawed. There's that meme going around of like, how much does it take to buy a doctor as much as it takes to buy a politician? Like it's all the same shit. Like this idea that just because they wear a white suit. The other thing too, right? So speaking to other athletes, but other people who have been physical most of their lives, when you get hurt, it's quite common and normal for you to get a second opinion, right? From one doctor to another. And it's quite common for doctors to have difference in opinion. They could look at the same x-rays, MRIs, whatever it may be, or you could give them your symptoms and they could have a completely different opinion on what they think might be wrong with you. And that's completely okay until now. Now we have decided that any doctor that has a different opinion that goes against the grain and goes against the mainstream narrative on what they were pushing, that this virus is a big deal and this and that, then it's pseudoscience, then it's conspiracy theories. And we must decide what truth is for you, because you're not intelligent enough to get to research yourself, get information, and decide for yourself. And so that's a scary part of it. I mean, this idea that, like, because freedom of speech, like I'm sure everybody's heard many times, freedom of speech is to protect unpopular speech because popular speech doesn't need protecting. So if somebody has a difference in opinion, but they have a PhD and they've studied medicine, why isn't their opinion valid enough? Like, why can't I hear their opinion and then decide for myself? Like, this whole idea of like, I mean, and the thing is, we know, like Fauci, for example, on that 60 Minutes interview, he lied. He said that, they said, oh, are you sure that, people don't need to wear masks? And he's like, no, it's silly. He's like, unless you work in the hospital or whatever, this and that. And then he came back and said, oh, yeah, that's only because, I didn't want all the masks to be bought up or whatever and be a shortage. And it's like, okay, well, the guy interviewing you said, there's a lot of people listening. Are you sure people don't need to wear masks? And so if you truly believe people should be wearing masks, how many people did not wear masks that could have, that according to what you're saying, that this is a big deal, could be dead, according to your what you said and the way you responded in your answer. So either way, he's not a moral person. He could lie on camera with a straight face, and he either lied or he told the truth, one of the two, and either one isn't good, because if he told the truth, we shouldn't be forced to be wearing them now, and if he lied, then he obviously can lie on camera. And I mean, anybody who, I mean, this guy loves TV. I mean, he's on every morning show. He's being interviewed everywhere. He wants to be a celebrity. I mean, there's been people talking about that, how he would love to, like, there's people asking like who would play you in a movie and all this stuff. I mean, it's still, he's thrown out the first pitch. It's crazy.
I wouldn't call that
like,
a pitch.
Yeah, no, I hear it. Good point. Yeah, he's attempting to throw out the first pitch, but yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, these people. I mean, and he was a part of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah,
he was a part of the AIDS epidemic with Dr. Drew. And Dr. Drew was one of the people who was outspoken about the media completely overhyping this and blowing this out of proportion. And then eventually, because Dr. Fauci became such a household name and he was friends with Dr. Fauci, he's like, well, I think people should listen to Dr. Fauci. I think, and it's like, because of their relationship, maybe somebody in the inside said, hey, Dr. Drew, stop saying the opposite of what Dr. Fauci is saying. You guys are friends, and but he's like, the media's blown it up. Fauci was a part of the AIDS epidemic, had ridiculous outcomes that never came about, that all these people were going to die and all this stuff. And then he was asked later, and he's like, I'm glad that the estimates were higher because people took it seriously. And so he's not afraid of scaring people into doing what he wants them to do. And obviously his links to Bill Gates and the Vaccine Alliance group, the GAVA or whatever it's called, and the National Institute of Health sending money to the Wuhan lab. Those articles were being ripped away on Facebook, called fake news or whatever they were calling it, whatever term they were giving it. But they were saying that those articles weren't accurate, when it's like, wait, this is just connecting some dots. Like, you guys are claiming that this could possibly come out of Wuhan. It's a little coincidental that we gave a bunch of money for this research, and people were saying that what the research they were doing was dangerous. They're messing around with coronaviruses. Same thing with Fort Detrick, which was shut down multiple times, because of contamination or whatever. So, yeah, there's a lot of things here. I mean, the way I look at it is that everybody should have access to all the information, all the opinions. I mean, I get the idea of drawing the line where, yeah, like, if somebody's saying go be violent, go hurt somebody. But if it's just opinions, then people should have the right to share those things regardless. I mean, David Icke was being censored for just sharing his opinions. And I give London Real a lot of credit for having his back and saying, hey, I might not agree with everything you say, but I will defend your right to say it. And that's what we should all do. People should have the right to say whatever they want, because if not, then we're letting a small group of people decide what truth is, and they're force feeding us their truth. And you're going to live your life with blinders on, because everybody else who has a different perspective, you're not going to even be aware they exist. So I think, we live in some fucking crazy times right now.
Yeah, you can say that again. Being in Massachusetts, you mentioned you're a masshole. When you came from Portugal, did you go right to Massachusetts, or did you come somewhere else in America first?
Yeah, we came. I think initially we lived. So I have family in Long Island, and we had some family that was already here in Long Island, like Smithtown and some other places. And I think we stayed with them for a little bit, and then eventually we migrated to Ludlow. and Ludlow, Massachusetts. And it was like a lot of foreigners, they go where there's a community, right? So people here, they had some family here, they knew some people here, and so it's comfortable, it was easy. You had people that would help them find work or whatever. My parents had to do the very hard thing of well, it's funny because my mother for a while didn't even tell me about this until I got a little older. I think I don't know, maybe it was she was embarrassed, maybe she didn't know if she was in the right. But my parents, they came here prior to us, and they left us there. I think I was from 3 to 4. They left my brother and I there with our family, my aunts and uncles and whatnot, which there was a lot of them because my dad's one of 12, my mom's one of 7. So we had a lot of family to take care of us in Portugal, and they left us there so they could get established here, because they were told that if they came to America with 2 babies, 2 3-year-olds or whatever, it would be really hard to get established, find a work and find babysitters while you work and all that stuff. So they actually came here for a year. And until they got settled in and got a place to stay or whatnot, and then eventually we got shipped over, and so then we ended up coming. I think by the time when we came here, I think my brother and I, we stayed in New York for just a little bit of time, I think less than a year, and then eventually we ended up coming to Ludlow, and Ludlow was basically home, similar to like Fall Rivers or New Bedford, where there's a lot of Portuguese or any type of people. You go there because you hope that either people from back home, you have some mutual friends or family, or you just hope that it'll be easier to find work, or because you can meet somebody who speaks your language or whatnot. My parents came here, then till this day they really don't speak much English. It's gotten better, but there's pros and cons of living in a town that has a lot of people who are right off the boat. I mean, I think the pros are, like, when my wife met me, she's like, "Oh, it's awesome. You guys still eat Portuguese food. Your mom's playing Portuguese music in the background all the time. There's Portuguese butcher shops and bakeries." But the cons are, because you're constantly going places where you can speak your native tongue, you never really are forced to have to learn English that much. So, I still read their mail and I still go to the doctors with them, but it's nice. I benefited from it because I've been able to, Portuguese was my first language, and I've been able to kind of get the best of both worlds of, like, keeping some of that culture alive in my own life with my family and my kids or whatnot, and yet still get Americanized, where I can I can speak the language and read it and write it and do all the things necessary to kind of not be restricted.
So my question was, do you think in English or do you think in Portuguese, or both?
I think it's funny because somebody's asked me that, but they said a similar question: do you dream in English or Portuguese? And I think when I was younger, for a long time, it was Portuguese. I still swear in Portuguese from time to time, but mostly because you figure maybe nobody will know what you're saying. But I definitely, English is definitely my dominant language. It's become, throughout the years, the one that I'm most comfortable speaking. I think I can explain things best. When you don't, it's like riding a bike. People say, a language, like, you can get back to speak, increasing your vocabulary or whatnot. But because I don't live at home, and throughout the years, like, most of my friends and family, like, I didn't speak Portuguese that much unless it was like family get-togethers or at home when I would communicate with my parents. Even my Portuguese friends and family, if they spoke English, we spoke English to each other most of the time. I think it's become the dominant language in regards to my thinking and just the language I go to. It's kind of, I feel like I say Portuguese is my first language because when you're 4 and you come to America, I wasn't exposed to any English in Portugal. So when I came to America, like, it was only Portuguese language. I didn't know any English words, and I had to go to school and then have a translator who could help, kind of, a language coach or whatever it was, a teacher that would help me understand the kind of separate the two languages, because for a while I was mixing the two and nobody knew what the hell I was saying. And then eventually I think I got I kind of figured it out, and I kind of separated the two. But it always amazes me because sometimes people who speak multiple languages, like, I know a lot of people who are from countries like Lebanon who because of the French influence and the French Empire going everywhere, they're forced to speak or learn French, but they also speak Arabic, and they know one or two other languages, and especially languages that are that drastically different. It always amazes me when people like that, because the languages I know, even English, there's some similarities to the Latin languages, and like Spanish isn't that different, Italian, French, it's not that. There's a lot of words that are similar, and you can kind of see the similarities, but like a completely different language, to be able to go like talking to one person in English and 2 seconds later you're taking a phone call or you're speaking Arabic, and a lot of the words are sometimes in different orders too, like the way they say things. Like in Portuguese they say things backwards, like a lot of Latin languages, in regards to like the description and like the word, like the red house or the house is red, like a lot of those languages, the way they order things is slightly different, and to do that subconsciously without even thinking about it, to me it's pretty amazing. Every once in a while I'm like, it's fucking wild you do it. Like it's wild what humans are capable of doing. Like even athletes, right? It's muscle memory, but you're teaching your reaction, right? If you're playing a sport, you don't really have time to think, because everything's so quick. So when you're in that flow state and things are just happening, it's like, it's just reaction. It's like this pattern recognition. You see certain things and you're reacting a certain way because you saw those certain things. If you see somebody coming at you when you're at the 3-point line, you're about to shoot, you immediately, you almost don't have time to think about it. It's just, you taught yourself that, okay, well, their momentum's coming towards me, so let me get by them. But now that their momentum's coming towards me, it's like all of these little things. So it's amazing what like the subconscious and how much of we're doing that we don't even really dissect or realize that we're doing all this thinking and analyzing and whatnot. It just becomes like breathing, something you're not even aware of.
And so do you are you fostering that with your children? Are they
Bilingual?
Yeah,
we're trying. Well, they find it funny because in Portuguese culture, it's hilarious when little kids swear. So my kids like swear they know all the swear words in Portuguese, because if they swear in English around people tell them no, but if they swear in Portuguese around people laugh. So they love swearing in Portuguese. It's like it's hilarious, because it's just like, and Portuguese people, they're like, especially northern Portugal, because we're like very blue collar, we they're farmers and whatnot, and that's where I'm from. I was born in Chaves, and then we're up a little more north, and but it's just one of those things where we're not very professional in regards to like, being well spoken and not swearing or whatever, because you work on a farm. So it's like construction culture. I do construction full time. You're not at a cubicle around other people who are going to be offended by what you say or whatnot. You're around like people get their hands dirty, and it's like, so it's like, how worried are you about offending the guy who is like smoking a cigarette and getting his boots all dirty and whatnot? It's just like, it's just one of those things where just those up north, we're just much more open to finding humor and things that you would consider almost like East Coast humor, right? Like I think we're thicker skinned in the East Coast, like we look at just our comedians, for example. People come out of the East Coast, like they don't worry about tiptoeing the line or hurting people's feelings quite as much as people from other parts of the country. And I think northern Portugal is very similar. So when they hear my kids swear, they just think it's hilarious. Nobody ever says like, oh my God, shouldn't you worry about that? So like the kids get like, motivation to do it over and over again. But I think it's like, I've been telling my wife, she's like, well, are you ever worried about them saying it in school or whatever? I'm like, yeah, of course, I mean, whenever that will be, because my kids are now homeschooled. But I think it's just words, and I think there's some good into explaining to them. It's just words. You're not hurting anybody, like and I always have my kids. I like when my kids question me and ask questions, because it gives me opportunity to kind of expand on something. And because they'll say, oh, like, you guys swear, right? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you hear me swear from time to time, but I'm like, I also know when to not swear, so I'm like, so when I say, like, okay, I'm not mad at you because you said a swear, just understand that, like, I'm not mad at you, but understand that you can, I'll give you flexibility when you're around us and you're around, your family at home, and we'll laugh it off or whatever, but just don't, you have to remember there's line, don't don't cross that line where now you're in a professional setting where people might not understand your sense of humor. You know, it's like telling a joke to some, or being raunchy with somebody you don't know if they like raunchy jokes. Like, you might offend them. So it's like just knowing, you know, don't take, I don't know. When I was a kid, I just didn't like rules. And I have this thing where it's just like, I want to mold great human beings, but I don't want to overwhelm them with just rules like do what I say, not what I do type thing. It's like, if you're not hurting anybody, like, that's fine. Like, whatever. You want to eat candy before you you know, have dinner. Okay, I'm not going to fight with you over it. I'm not going to make a big deal. I'll attempt to tell you no, and then it's like, if you're making it, like, okay, then let's meet somewhere in the middle. You know, let's reason. Okay, just a little a skittle. I'll let you have a skittle. You know, something. So it's like, to me, like, I was talking with somebody recently, a friend of mine, who's like, you know, like, some people say like your kid should be your friend, and it's my buddy Damar, and he has a unique job because he deals with broken homes and stuff or whatever. But so his perspective might be slightly different. But he talks about how, like, and a lot of people say this, like, your kids shouldn't be your friends. Like, you should be disciplining them. They should respect you or whatever. And I kind of push back a little bit, because as a friend, like, I tell my friends the truth. Like, if I think that it could be painful or it could cause some issues, I feel like not saying anything could make it worse, and then I'm not being a good friend doing it. So, like, for example, like, if my friend was, I mean, here's kind of a mild example, but if my friend was wearing some stupid shirt or hat and we're going out, I wouldn't just say, yeah, you look great, dude. Like, I'd be like, hey, Kevin, like, take off that fucking hat. Like, you look ridiculous, you know, like, you know. And it just, to me, it would be, I would want somebody to say the same thing to me, you know, not be rude about it, because I think sometimes people justify being rude by saying, oh, I'm just being honest. No, you're being a dick. Like, you can be honest without being rude. Like, I can tell you how I feel, or tell you I'm concerned, without being a jerk about it, you know. And I think some people are just like, well, I'm just being honest, you know. It's like, no, you're just finding a reason to be rude. And so, but I also, you know, it's the same thing with the truth movement. Like, I find myself, like, my desire to avoid conflict, because I don't like conflict, is weaker than my desire to be honest. And if something that I truly am passionate about on a certain topic or issue, I feel like I'm contributing to the propaganda, or I'm contributing to misinformation, disinformation spreading, if I don't say something. You know, like, if I don't say anything and somebody's saying that, like, yeah, this COVID thing's real dangerous, huh? You know, and I just sit there and I'm like, okay, well, I know this is going to be a short conversation, and I know that who knows, it could even lead to a tense situation. But if I don't say anything, the person he's talking to is going to agree with him, maybe out of politeness, maybe out of not knowing much information, and then they're going to continue spreading this, because our peers having similar opinions to us justifies, or not, it reinforces our opinions, right? So if we think somebody else thinks it's a big deal, and I think it's a big deal, then it's like, yeah, see, more people think the way I am, which means I must be right, you know. So I think, yeah, that's a huge issue. What the hell was the question? I go on these long rants, and then I'm like,
oh, you're good. That's how we roll. No, I was just you were talking about you know, raising your kids. And,
oh, my kids, yes.
you
I
know,
got far off that.
being bilingual, and then also being friends with them. And then my question was, or where I was leading with that was, now that you are homeschooling, how is that going? Like, was that a tough decision? You know, I have a couple friends that are, you know, have kids your age that are kind of going through the same thing. And I actually have a cousin who recently just asked me to be his godfather for his
Awesome. Congrats.
daughter that's going to be coming in January. But I jokingly said, I'll love to do it as long as you don't do any vaccines. And they were like, wait, whoa, what are you talking about? What are you saying? They're like, I was just joking, but they got like, so like, what do you mean no vaccines? And I'm like, have you really looked into it? You know, because that's another meme that's kind of going around now, is that, you know, it's the anti-vaxxers that actually know more about what's in vaccines than the people that are pro-vaccine. You know, it's the pro-vaxxers that are just like you were talking about before, where, oh, that's a guy in a white coat or a gal in a white coat. They have a prescription pad. You know, they went to medical school. They must obviously know more than me, or be more informed, or have more up-to-date information. And it's like, no, you know what the guy that got all D's in medical school is called? He's called Dr. Two. You know, so it's like, Was he, and why can't we talk about alternative medicine or holistic medicine? I mean, we've been using it for thousands of years. Now, all of a sudden, they're going in and raiding IV bars and pulling people out of IV bars for getting vitamin C shots or B12 shots or a Myers cocktail, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's just wild. Or if you're anti-mask, now you must be a Trump supporter.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, it's one of those things where everything's become a political argument. Where if you wear a mask, it's because you're anti-Trump. If you don't wear a mask, it's because you're pro-Trump. And it's like, well, it's never about the evidence or about just your logical opinion based on the evidence. You just looked at all the sides of the story and you kind of just came to the conclusion that wearing one kind of seems silly. Like, it's never that. It's always these politically motivated things. I mean, it's same thing with the protests. I mean, I think a lot of people, their hearts are in the right place. I just think that they're being misguided, and I think they're being used as political weapons. I think all this stuff is being used as a political weapon. I mean, even the pro-Trump people, like, in a way, are kind of being used a little bit, because it's like, he's not the second coming of Jesus. Like, he's not, okay, has he done some things that, like, I can say, okay, yeah, that seems a little different than maybe another shitty politician would have done. But did he stop the wars overseas? Did he not attempt, did he use the same rhetoric in regards to Venezuela and like how, there's such a corrupt country, we need to get involved? Well, it's like, it's not that different. And this goes back to, I think, the thing that we all ponder on and have this internal dilemma about is the politician's heart in the right place, then gets into power and eventually realizes you have no control, and there's so many things pulling you in so many different directions and so many other interests and so many other things going on that you just don't have any real control to maybe do the things you want to do? Or is it that every person who runs for president, by the time you get to that high on the ladder in politics, there's no way you can't already be corrupt anyways? I mean, and there's probably a few exceptions to the rule. I think Ron Paul was probably one of them. Dennis Kucinich is another one who seemed like a sincere person. Ralph Nader, Ross Perot, even, who paid for his own ads. I think some of these guys truly do believe in what they're saying, and that's probably why none of them really got that far. I mean, Ron Paul was a true, just old school movement of like people like you and I just talking about him and being passionate about him and really just getting the word out there. I mean, he didn't really, he didn't get any help from mainstream media, who kept not talking about him on purpose and whatnot. But so it's weird. I think he does some good. I know there were some stories about him wanting to get Robert Kennedy Jr. in his cabinet in regard, or just help, I think, or as an advisor or consultant, something in regards to the vaccine issue or whatnot. And then there's also a Bill Gates clip of Bill Gates talking about. Have you seen that? The one.
Many glitches.
Well, there's that. No, there's one also of him talking about how he went to go meet Trump, President Trump, and then when he met him, he was talking about the vaccine thing and Robert Kennedy and some of his, I guess, how he's still undecided on the issue and his concerns about it. And Bill Gates is like, no, he's like, that's just, conspiracy theories or whatnot. He's like, I talked to him about it or whatever, basically saying that he like changed his mind. And analyzing Trump, it seems like his mind's easily changed. So that could be the case why the vaccine thing hasn't been brought up again. But every once in a while, he does throw curveballs where the hydroxychloroquine issue was a very obvious, not a political issue. It should have been just a big pharma issue. Big pharma just demonizing a drug that they pushed and was FDA approved and was not as it wasn't any more unsafe than any other drug that's been on the market. I mean, you look at these commercials on TV after a drug commercial, at the very end, you see a list of side effects. So if you find some study that shows that some people had side effects from this drug, why is that unusual or some reason to be worried? I mean, every drug on the market has a ridiculous amount of side effects, possible side effects. So it was obvious that they were just demonizing it because they didn't want it to be the treatment, the standard treatment. They wanted They wanted to push some new vaccine, some profitable vaccine, some new drug, some profitable drug, and then the worst part is that we paid for that research. We would pay for the research for the new vaccine, for the new drug, because government was just throwing money away. Like, find the answer here. Here's all this money. Here's all this funding. Find a way to stop this. And so we're paying for all that. And then they're going to sell us back the drug. So we're paying for the drug. We're paying for the research. And then we're going to pay for the drug. And so it's just, and so when he came out and he said, I'm taking a hydroxychloroquine, like, that was pretty ballsy. When he comes out and he says to, media, like, hey, you guys are writing, fake stories or political stories, or you're leaving parts out. I mean, that is him pushing back the curtain a little bit and kind of proving that, like, hey, you know what? Like, this dude is willing to do something that the other politicians didn't do, because all the other politicians just play the game. They know that there's a game of manipulation of, like, okay, this news agency doesn't like me, so they're going to kind of twist what I say, but I never come out during a press conference and call them out on it. I just play the game, and I do my best to try to maybe word things differently next time or whatever. So I think people like the fact that he was doing stuff that other politicians wouldn't do. Now, I just don't think that, you can put all your eggs in one basket and believe that he's the second coming of Jesus and he's going to save us all. And he's locking up more pedophiles than ever and all this other stuff. I mean, people keep saying that. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, people, pedophiles and drug, human trafficking has, like, that stuff's been around forever. And people always got arrested for those things. Like, it didn't, it's not like it stopped and it just started up again under Trump, so yeah, it's I think there's a little bit of, like, the Obama thing of everybody believing Obama was going to be the hero, the second coming. He was going to, and a little bit, I think, was the hatred of the prior person, right? I think, people really hated Obama or they really hated Bush, for example. So they really liked Obama. They really, it was really easy to get passionate about Obama because he was so different than the guy you hated, the guy who was getting you in all those wars, the guy who was lying. So, but the guy you want to have a drink with, because he did seem like a good time, Bush, even though he was a war criminal. But he was hilarious. I will say he did have a pretty good sense of humor. And but yeah, so it is one of those things where it just, like, I think a little bit of, and that's why I love James Corbett so much. When he immediately after Trump became president, he did a documentary at the end of the Obama administration saying that it was a documentary called, like, Ashes. Legacy of Ashes. And then he had a documentary that came out when Trump got in office soon after called Filling the Swamp, because everybody was talking about, the swamp or whatever. And so I think that, yeah, like, it's good when you see people like that, who you see, like, aren't picking teams and just care about, seeking truth, and they'll talk about anybody and everybody, and that they're not, But yeah, so I just think it's it's one of those things. Corbett and other podcasters and researchers, documentary filmmakers who don't pick a political team are out there, because they are the ones who I go to for information, and I can be confident that even if there's somebody they like, if they're doing something corrupt, I can go to them for answers, and I can go to them knowing that they're not going to hide some information that maybe looks that makes their politician look bad, and I think now. And it's like every election year, we have, it's like everybody smoked too much pot and they have awful long-term memory. And we forget, like, it's the same shit every 4 years. Like, we think, this next guy is going to change things. This next guy is going to be the answer. And it's like every 4 years, very little changes, so it's, I think we just have to wake up and realize, like, we need some drastic change. We need something that's really going to make a difference.
So
somebody who's going to make a difference, somebody who's actually going to just throw yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of that drastic change and, knowing that we have to make a difference, where do we start in the climate that we're in right now? And it seems like the sky is falling, and it seems like it's hard to get people to agree or disagree on masks. Where do you think we can start in kind of changing the system? Because I've always been of the mindset of this system's broken, especially when you have two candidates and everyone's like, oh, I'm going to vote for the lesser evil. Like that's what we've come to in our country, where we're picking the lesser evil, even though we know it's evil. How do we change this? How do we get people not to vote? Or how do we get people to say, hey, I don't want to pick either one of those?
I think it's one of those things where I don't think there's one answer. There's one thing we can do, but I think that everything helps, right? So like I would always get people would say, "Oh, what can I do?" or "What, I can't change anything, so I'm just who cares? Who cares about politics?" And I don't care about politics in regards to like I don't care what Nancy Pelosi says or what Trump said during a press conference or who's in his cabinet. I care about the big issues that affect us and affect our ability to be free and enjoy life, our ability to just make decisions for ourselves. But I think this alone, like I think the power of conversation is understated in many cases. I think people don't realize that we have some influence. Like we're all influencing people. Somebody's going to listen to this and they're going to be influenced, and it's going to influence the conversation they have with the next person, and then the next person, and it's the ripple effect. I mean, that's why I called it the ripple effect, because I truly believe in this, our ability to make a difference, even if it's just spreading conversation and opening minds to different perspectives. And I think there shouldn't be probably one answer. I think there should be a lot of really intelligent people bringing different ideas and us exploring all of them. I know some of the people who've been on my show are fans of the Zeitgeist movement. Other people are against it. Some people are fans of the anarcho-libertarian movement. Some people are against it. But whatever movement or philosophy or opinion you may have on any of this stuff and how to mold a world or economy, I think that we should entertain all of them. I don't think that even in that regards we should join a team and say let's promote this, promote that. I think we should entertain all of them, and I think that we just need to come to terms that something different needs to be done. Like we can't keep doing the same old thing, and that means like entertaining all these what some people might call extreme ways of molding a society. Like a lot of these ways of looking at the world, the Venus Project and all this stuff, like it seemed crazy. It seemed like, oh, a resource-based economy, that seems insane, that would never work. But we've gotten to the point where it's like, well, this doesn't work. Like what is your, like, when people say, oh, that will never work, like what are those guidelines that you're using? Like, because you could say people are poor, people are dying, there's huge wealth going to the top 1% or even less, there's wars, unjust wars happening all the time, there's truth and people with alternative perspectives being suppressed. So obviously this isn't working in some sense. Like you can look at what we're doing and say, well, this hasn't been the perfect project either. Like things aren't rosy and everybody's not happy and there's no suffering. So it's like, I guess, we have to rethink, like, well, what do we mean by that won't work or that won't work? So I think those are the questions people need to have. We have to explore different opinions, and even if they seem extreme, I think not exploring other perspectives is dangerous, because the alternative is we just get something that's slightly different and just slightly, we're okay with just like slightly changing things, and then nothing ever gets changed. It's just the same thing over and over again.
Do you have a follow-up, Jim?
Yeah, I just, I appreciate your perspective on things, and a question I wanted to ask, but it kind of got away from us. But, you said that you kind of educate your kids on cursing, and you teach them when to use it, when not to use it, when it's appropriate, when not to say anything. And I appreciate that, because we grew up in a house where our father cursed like a sailor, but it was one of those things where we just kind of had to ignore it. And then, I'm 33, and if I'm having a conversation with my mother now, to this day, she'll correct me. It's like, oh, I don't know why you speak like that. I don't know where you learned that. I'm like, really? You don't know where I learned that? So I appreciate your perspective, kind of educating your kids on it, and realizing that, yeah, they're gonna curse. So why not make it appropriate? And you're homeschooling your kids, so just kind of go into your philosophy on raising kids and how you kind of took that into homeschooling and what that situation looks like.
Yeah, well, the thing about homeschooling is it's not that, like when my kids are real young, so it wasn't that hard, because like kindergarten and preschool, that type of thing, like it's not mandatory anyway. So we can just be like, well, what's the point of paying for them to be staring at a Zoom, a Zoom meeting or whatever, and it gets boring, and it's kind of counterproductive anyways, because it's like you're constantly telling your kids, I mean, I'm luckily, knock on wood, my kids enjoy going outside and being social and whatnot, but in many cases parents are constantly telling their kids, like, stay off your tablet, go have human interaction, and now you're forcing them to be staring at a computer screen for hours, you know. So but yeah, I mean, in regards to that, I think there's a lot kids learn just from playing. You know, I think that we over analyze children today. I think in regards to like, oh, they haven't hit this milestone, or are they using a fork, are they doing, and it's just like it's like, you know, the argument about Common Core and in school, like it's not one size fits all. Like a child could maybe not know how to write, right? Like my son, for example, he struggled initially with holding a pen, right? He didn't know the proper way of doing it, or he would just struggle a little bit, but he could count like to whatever number, because we would watch sports and he'd always be like, oh, which one's my favorite player? Oh, he's the number 30. And so he would recognize 30. Oh, who's that other player I like? Number 25. And so he would recognize that. And then he would recognize large numbers. He would also look at formations for like soccer, for example. He'd go on my phone. I have this app that just for soccer scores and whatnot. And he'd go there, and once the lineups come out like an hour before the game, you know, I would show him. I'd be like, oh, here's your favorite player, and look, oh, they're doing a 4-2-2, or they're doing a whatever. And he's like, what does that mean? And so then I would explain it to him, and then he started looking at formations, like, oh, look, they're doing a 4-3-3 today, or whatever. And so he's like clever with all these other things. And so it's like, intelligence isn't this thing of like just regurgitating information or knowing how to hold a pen. You know, it's like, it's critical thinking, it's creativity, it's imagination, and it's all these things you can't quantify. But the thing about teaching, it'd be too difficult to figure out individually each child, like, hey, he's smart, he's really intelligent in regards to these things, and he's really intelligent in regards to those things. So we have to test everybody slightly different, and we have to, you know, like really take some time to figure out, you know, is there something that he's really intelligent in, and maybe he's struggling with another thing? It's like, no, everybody has to learn the same shit. And if you have to know the same stuff, and if you don't know these things, then we just consider you dumb, and we consider you not intelligent or behind, you know, to use a lighter word. You're behind, your kid's behind in this, your kid's behind. Well, he's way advanced in this, and he's way advanced in that. And so I just think, you know, my parents, you know, even myself, I mean, I hated school growing up. I mean, I did. I mean, I didn't, you know, I was kind of speaking of kids, and I didn't, you know, I didn't like school. It was one of those things where I didn't. A little bit was because probably being a metalhead and being a little bit of an outsider initially, and then it got to the point where you know. Yeah, so it just got to the point where it just got really hard to, what the hell was I just talking about?
Yeah.
I think they overanalyze things. Well, every parent I know, like young parent like myself, they stress about like, oh, my teacher or my pediatrician said my kid should know how to do this by now, or my kid should know how to do that by now. And it's funny because I just started a kid cast for them. It's like a kid podcast. We just had our first episode, and if you listen to them talk for like 20 minutes, you could be like, oh, they know stuff, and there's things that they're aware of and understand and whatnot. And that's probably a better, yes. And that's probably a better, guys. So I just think that and you're going to find out as a godparent, you're going to find out about that. Like, they're going to be stressing out about certain milestones. Oh, my pediatrician said that he should be doing this by now. He should be doing that by now. And you realize, like, when we were kids, probably nobody kept up with that. Like, I don't know when I started walking. You know, I don't know when I started crawling, but it didn't, like, I'd love to see the statistics that, like, kids who started walking within these many months are now, like, in the NBA or NFL, and kids who didn't are now struggling in life. You know, like, I just think it's completely overanalyzing. I think in many cases it's a money motive. You know, like, vaccines, for example, pediatricians 99% of the time, it's okay, just ignore it. But 99% of the time, pediatricians just basically the first like year of their life, you're just showing up to vaccinate your kid. Like, there's no other reason to show up, and every time they show up, they can charge your insurance. So they want you to show up, because every time you show up, it's a charge, and it's a quick in and out, because you show up. Oh, how is your kid doing? Good. Well, is he eating good? Yeah. Is he sleeping good? Okay, time for your vaccine. Boom, see ya. And it's like, okay, and that's it. So it's like, you remove vaccines from the equation, there's probably way less money in regards to people showing up. And like my kids, they show up when they're sick, which they're never sick, so they barely ever show up. Like we do every 6 months we go in just to do height and weight and kind of keep track with that. But outside of that, we'd never go to a pediatrician. I mean, we never, there's no need to, so and plus every time you do show up, they're like making you feel guilty about not vaccinating your kids. It's always like, you really should, you're putting your kid in danger's way. I mean, you just saw these kids. Anybody who knows my kids, they're healthy, they have no issues, they're not behind in anything cognitively or neurologically or anything. They're never sick. And even during the whole coronavirus lockdown, I had people over my house every weekend. I told people, you guys want to, you bored? Like most of us, come over, feel free. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I actually think there's some benefit in my kids being exposed to germs and being around other people and bacteria or whatnot. Because if I just sanitize the shit out of the world and I, make them wash their hands way too many times, then eventually their immune system's going to weaken. As you guys know, as athletes, your immune system's like your muscles. Like if you overwork it out, yeah, you can get hurt and you can pull something, you can tear something. But if you underwork it out, it gets weak. And your immune system is like that. You have to work it out from time to time. That's why this increase in popularity of like probiotics and all this stuff, it's probiotics. It means it's pro-bacteria. Like it's bacteria that's good for you. Like we need bacteria. We need to be exposed to viruses from time to time. We need to be exposed to different things in the elements from time to time. You look at construction workers who basically didn't stop working throughout the whole lockdown. If there's not somewhere to wash their hands, guess what? They're still eating their lunch. Like, and they're all sharing tools. They're all doing whatever. Like, it is what it is. I mean, you're going to the bathroom outside. There's no like place where I'm going to wash my hands after I pee. I mean, you're being like on the side of the highway sometimes, so it's in the woods. So it's like, it is what it is. So it's like this idea of like being exposed to germs and we should be all germaphobes. It's insane. I think it can actually do some harm. But in regards to my kids, because I get way off track, as you can tell, I definitely think that I make sure my wife and I don't stress about those things. We don't stress about like milestones. We make sure that they experience life as much as possible. And in those experiences, they're learning things, so be around people, play games, interact, go outside, we'll go outside and we'll find different games to play with balls or different, we'll play horse, we'll play around the world, we'll play, whatever, we'll do drills or we'll keep score. Like all these things are taking things that even video games, there's some benefit in that in regards to stimulating the mind and just strategizing to win the game. I think this whole idea of like games are completely just useless in a child's life. I don't think it's necessarily true. I think there can be anytime you're problem solving, even if it is for entertainment purpose and it's a video game, you're still problem solving, you're still stimulating your brain. So and just I bring them everywhere for the purpose of like, I don't know if you guys notice when you travel, but it seems like it gets you out of your pattern of thinking. Like when you do the same routine every single day, it's hard to think differently because you're doing the same things every day. You're taking in the same inputs every day. But then when you travel and you're seeing new environments, you're meeting new people, you're dealing with new things, it seems like it provokes thought, or at least in my experiences, it seems like it makes me just come up with things I didn't think about or analyze things in a different way I didn't analyze things. So I kind of believe the same thing would happen with my children. Like if they're in the same four walls watching the same TV, playing the same games every day, their mind's not very stimulated. But when they go somewhere new, maybe to a new restaurant, a new mall, they travel somewhere to a new beach or whatever it may be, they see new things. So then they ask new questions and they get new answers, and just constantly adds to that. So I think we have to rethink our the way we look at, I shouldn't even be rethink. I think the way our primitive ancestors probably raised their kids was probably a better way than what we're doing now. In many cases, people aren't raising their kids. Oh, I can't afford not to stay at home. So who's raising your kid? The schools, the TV, the entertainment, because somebody's influencing the way that kid's thinking and molding him. And it's not you. If you're not in his life, then who is? I try to spend as much time as possible with my children, as you can tell why they're here now. And because I want to have an influence on their lives. I want to be the answer that they think about, to that question that they had. I want to, I just, obviously you can't be the only influence on their lives, but you want to be the majority of it, or at least a big part of it. And I think that's a huge issue just among itself, just the fact that we're so dependent on on other people raising our kids, and for what? Like, so we can have more material things, so we can have a higher paying job, so we can, are those things good, satisfying? Are those things not going to, like those things aren't real. They're not going to last forever. They make you it's a temporary satisfaction. It's a temporary happiness. It's like Hatebreed had this album a long time ago. I don't know if you guys know who Hatebreed is, but I was a fan of theirs back in the day, and they had an album called "The Satisfaction is the Death of Desire." And I remember, like, it always stuck with me for some reason. I'm always like, yes, like it's such a simple line, but it's like it's complex in regards to, like, you can use it to just explain your issues with just about everything. Like, you get bored with something, like you can strive to, you meet a beautiful girl, like your life goal becomes, how do I get her to, like, go out on a date with me? And then you do it, and then eventually after a while you're like, that girl's boring. She's and it's like, she's not interesting at all. Like, and all of a sudden you lose complete interest, and it's just like that's basically like the dilemma we're constantly dealing with. Is like, satisfaction is death of desire. I buy this expensive car because I worked hard for it. I saved all this money, then I buy it. It satisfies me for a little bit. Then the next model year they came out with a nicer one, and I'm like, oh shit, man, like, this thing doesn't, I'm satisfied. Desire is gone. Now I need a new thing. And it's like the itch that won't go away. Money's like that. I think with a lot of people in CEOs and people at the top of the ladder of the pyramid in regards to power, I think that they have a addiction to money, and they keep getting more power and more money, thinking that desire for it is going to go away. But they're no different than a drug addict that, one fix is never enough. They need more, and then they need more. They need more. And so I think we need to find happiness in the right places, in community, friends. I'm like you guys, I'm a recovering Catholic, being Portuguese, but I as I get older, I'm starting to see some benefits in it. I'm starting to see some benefits in, like, obviously if there's people that are completely, like, just extreme Catholics, then it can be dangerous. But I think if you use it just for a way to understand the world or yourself, you go to church, and it asks those bigger questions of, like, what is it all about? Should I be a good person? Should I think about morally who I am? I think that's good. I think all organized religions or spirituality, it can all be beneficial, because I think too often we just care so much about the material world that we don't ask those bigger questions. So I think for some people, if it asks those bigger questions, then it's probably doing some good in their, the worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, the community aspect of it too, of just bringing people together of a like mind. I think that's another big thing with the churches and the gyms being shut down, is you're stopping these people of coming together and talking about this problem or what's really going on. You can go down a rabbit hole with all that. Question: if there was one Portuguese curse word that the Airey Bros need to know, which one would it be?
Maybe I should ask my kids this. Hey, guys, what's your favorite Portuguese swear? They looking at me like I'm gonna yell at them for saying, look, I'm not supposed to do this. What? Caralho? Caralho? Yeah, caralho is a good one. For this, caralho. Bye for that. For this, caralho is my daughter's favorite. She likes saying, and then sometimes she says it backwards. She says caralho for this, and I'm not. I've actually now got confused on the correct way of saying it. But yeah, caralho for this. You'll see a lot of Brazilian, guys, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys and MMA guys say those are common, and Brazilian soccer players and Portuguese, Ronaldo, you'll sometimes read his lips. He'll be saying caralho or for this, or, bye for that, or something like that. Bye for that's like go F yourself.
Okay.
But yeah, so those are the big ones. It's caralho, it's for this, and it's bye for that, are like the ones you hear the most commonly. So if you're ever watching soccer or a UFC and you see a Brazilian guy, and they're probably going to say that if they're upset about anything. Those are the ones that are going to come to mind.
I've definitely heard that in the corner between rounds before, for sure.
Have you ever seen The Motivation Factor, Ricky?
No.
Okay, so Motivation Factor is a documentary that was created or made by Doug Orchard, and it goes into the La Sierra High School physical education program that JFK was starting to implement before he was assassinated. And it basically, it goes in depth into what JFK was trying to do of bringing back physical education to the forefront of education. Pre-Rockefeller Foundation, physical education was a big part of schooling, and the documentary was trying to point out the drop off in productivity in the workforce because people are so inactive now, and how we have to get back to this kind of physical regiment that they did. And so it shows these kids in the gym class in the 60s, and I mean every single one of them looks like an MMA fighter, Division I athlete, and some of them are just kids that go to gym class. And then it has these kids, later in when they're in their 60s or 70s, whatever age they are, just talking about the benefits of this program. But I always recommend to my friends that are, going through what we're going through now with homeschooling and all those sorts of things to check out this documentary, because we found it to be pretty impactful in terms of how important physical education is to actual educating. And I also spent 11 years as a special education teacher, so I know the ins and outs and the positives and the negatives of a public school system, and can see the benefits for changing for more physical education and stuff. The other thing, knowing that you're into the ketogenic diet and that you're haven't vaccinated your kids or are homeschooling now, do the kids subscribe to the ketogenic diet, or do you kind of let them do their own thing?
I've tried. It's so hard. It's so hard. Candy is crack. I mean, it's like, and the worst part, I have grandparents that could care less about the ketogenic diet. They get that their palate's like, what's this sugary thing that grandma gives me? And it's like, and it really is hard. And then my wife's always like, oh, we shouldn't deprive them of enjoying things like that. I'm like, yeah, I completely get it, but I also worry about long-term effects of like abusing that too. You can't use that to justify it. So what we do is like, we try to do our best to give them, like my son, he eats bunless burgers because I eat bunless burgers. He just thinks that's how you're supposed to eat a hamburger. He just so people are always like, oh, does he want it on a bun? And he's like, no. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. He's never seen people eat burgers on buns because he grew up watching me eat burgers without a bun. So that, and he got into steak and meat and stuff like that, and we can do like a meat heavy dinner or whatnot. But it just, they still like their rice and French fries from time to time, and they like, the desserts from time to time. But we find sometimes, like, I'll look at them like, holy shit, they had like a full ketogenic day because they ate like a bunless burger. They had, I make like paleo pancakes in the morning with like, some syrup alternative. There's a couple good ones, and then at night, even if they snack on something, I'll eat like that Rebel ice cream, so it's like a ketogenic ice cream that actually tastes really good. So is the other one. I think the other one's called keto, and another one that's a keto ice cream, and they taste really good. And it's easy for them to taste good because you take fat out of things, it tastes like shit. So you add fat, and you can, when you're trying to add fat in your diet, when you're doing a keto diet, things taste good. So it's not it's not hard to make it taste good. You just have to, obviously use like some sweetener alternative, something like, organic stevia or whatever, or monk fruit, which, neither of them have effect on your blood sugar. So they'll go days where they'll have like a almost full ketogenic diet, and then, it's hard, even when every once in a while he wants a Gatorade or he wants whatever, I'll try to find something that he likes to drink that is either sweetened with like cane sugar or some like healthy alternative sweetener, something that's not, high fructose corn syrup. But, so we definitely do our best, but any parent out there who can do it blows my effing mind, because I don't like, who Jim Abrams is? Did you guys listen to that show I did with Jim Abrams?
Yeah.
Yeah. He did it with his kid. I mean, he had no choice really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he did it, and I still like ponder on that. I'm like, how the F did he get a kid to eat like that? Because even if you're trying to convince him of it because of the results, like you're not seeing the results initially. It takes a little bit. So it's like, you know, you're taking away probably some things out of their diet that they liked that wasn't very good for them, but they liked and it was a part of their everyday routine. But so yeah, so it's definitely super difficult. I mean, I'd love to hear from any parents out there who could do it and done it successfully. I think you'd almost have to like put your kid in a bubble and not like let them be exposed to it anywhere else, because it's my, like, for example, my daughter still only drinks water, but my son likes, you know, every once or twice a week we'll have to like get some Propels that are, you know, something that's like sweetened with something that's halfway not harmful for you, because he wants something with flavor. He gets sick of drinking water, and it's all because my mother would go over there. She'd only give him juice, and so it's like he started getting that. So it's like I look back at it and I'm like, you know what, if they were with me 24/7, obviously they wouldn't know, their palate would have never been exposed to these other things. This would have just become their norm and it would have been fine. But because you can't control that, and sometimes they are going to other people's houses, other people's parties, and they're eating whatever they have out, chips or whatever it may be, then once they taste it, they're like, oh shit, this is really good. Hey, can you get me some? Can you get, you know, next time you go to the store, oh, I want that. I want those Doritos, you know? And so you try to do your best. And, you know, luckily my daughter loves Doritos and she just got excited because I said Doritos. And, but, you know, so I think of like, it's like the average person who maybe doesn't have the best diet. Like if you take baby steps and the majority of what you're eating is good, I think it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully as they get older and I can further explain to them like the benefits of eating a little better and maybe removing some of those things out of your diet, then, you know, I'm hoping I can get through them and eventually they'll have a much cleaner diet. But for now, yeah, it's very hard when kids are like 4 and 5 and 6, especially if they're going to birthday parties and they have cake and chips and like juice boxes. It's like they're in heaven. And then when they come home, they want that stuff, you know. And then water maybe didn't seem boring, but after going and inhaling all that stuff, now it seems super boring, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so it's definitely hard. I haven't been able to do it. To answer another question, you know, with 30-minute rant.
Do they have an awareness of like the impact of stuff like this sugary stuff, at least?
I try to tell them, because they're both into sports, and I try to tell them, you know, like my son, I'm like, listen, Ronaldo, I'm like, he doesn't eat like this. You think he eats freaking candy? I'm like, he's my age. He's 35 years old, and he's still playing soccer with the young guys. I'm like, it's because it's because he takes care of himself, you know. It's because he takes care of himself. It's because, and all this stuff will cause inflammation. It means the next day you're more tired, you're more hurt or whatever. So you do. Yeah. My daughter wants me to mention she also plays soccer. Yes.
Sweet. Ricky, we really appreciate your time. We got a couple rapid fires for you if you got a couple more minutes, and then we can
I got a couple.
Did you do the union yet, or is that coming up?
No, that's tonight at 7, and this is just, I'm like, I've been stressing all day because I just got my computer back, and Midnight Mike from the OBDM podcast, you know who he is?
Yep.
Yeah, he wants me to host it tonight. Usually he hosts it in regards to like his Zoom, because I'm usually just asked on Zoom. I have it. I have a pro account, but I just always use Skype because it's what I've always used since I started the podcast. It's just like this comfort thing, and so he's like, oh, you know, if I can't make it, it'd be awesome if you could start hosting them. So then it doesn't stop the show or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do it because I'm getting my computer back. And then I didn't end up getting it back till today. And then like, I'm still like nervous about like if everything works the way it should. And it wasn't like I couldn't get Pro Tools open because the files were in like another drive or whatnot. And it was a headache. So we're doing it tonight. Yeah, we're doing it tonight at 7. It'll be live streamed. And we have Pete Evans joining us, who's the Australian chef, real famous guy. Just had him on recently.
Yeah.
He's Jim Florentine's going to be on, I believe, tonight.
Yes, Jersey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jim Florentine. Yeah, I love Jim Florentine. He's been on my show a few times. Big fan of his. And he's going to be on. I've been trying to get him on for a while, but schedules haven't been working out. So I think tonight he confirmed already today that he'll be making it. And then some of the regulars, I'm sure Jason Burmis will be there tonight. I just had John Finch on the show. He I know he mentioned coming on the next one. I sent him a message, told him that if he wants to come on, I'll send him the link. Uh, we'll see, because I know he just had a fight
He's still partying,
Saturday.
right? Didn't he win? Or he
No, he
lost?
lost and retired.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He fought a up and coming Gracie, so it's not anything
all
to
right.
be ashamed of, you know. And it was on the ground that he lost, but he's had an amazing career, super nice guy, and he's really into podcasting and a bunch of other things. So I think that he's going to be pretty busy with other stuff, and which will make the transition much easier, you know. And I know a lot of these guys end up teaching or whatnot, so they're not completely away from the sport or whatnot. But so maybe him, and and a bunch of other people. I mean, it's amazing. It's like a VIP lounge that, like, it's invite only. Like, people are like, hey, can I be on the next one? Hey, send me the link. Can I be on the next one? You know, or if I don't invite somebody on the next one, then they'll be like, hey, you know, you didn't I never got that link. Can I be on the one after? You know, and it's just because I like to have some of the regulars, because a lot of the guys who've been on just about every show, like the Grime America guys, they're like super polite. And like, if there's new people on this show, they just let them talk, you know. So I'm always concerned about having too many people that have like strong personalities, and then there's just not enough time to let everybody talk, and then maybe some new person might not be able to put in their 2 cents. So it's like this combination of like, okay, you want, you know, some regulars can show up from time to time, but you also want to keep it fresh and have new faces, you know, every episode. So we try to do it every other Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it's live streamed. I think tonight I'm going to actually live stream it on my YouTube channel. We'll see how that goes.
Is there a specific topic tonight?
No, I mean, I wing it. People have asked me, and I'm like, dude, I host these things like I host my show. I'm like, I just kind of wing it. I mean, I think I'm going to open it up with, I'm giving you some behind the scenes information. I'm opening it up with, I'm probably going to ask Pete Evans, because there's been a lot of conversation about what's going on in Australia and New Zealand. And when he was on my show, he was talking about that, and he could foresee things getting as bad as things are now there. So I'll probably open up with that, just kind of like an update what's going on there, and then let people just kind of ring in and kind of give their 2 cents, and kind of just, you know, it's always, if you listen to these things, I suck at the only thing I'm really good at is like just holding a conversation, because as you can tell, when you ask a question, I don't shut the hell up. But I'm bad at like getting it going. And I don't want it to sound, I always wanted to kind of make it feel like a casual conversation. So I don't want it to do some like long intro or make it sound very proper or whatnot. So I try to kind of wing it. And once the ball gets rolling, then usually it's like easy. Then it's like, oh God, we gotta stop now. And like, we're really into some good conversation. So the hardest part's always the beginning. I always like stumble on like, how the hell am I what should I ask? Who should I ask it to, or whatnot? But once it gets going, then it's fine. So it should be another fun discussion. I think a lot of people are going to show up this week, because a lot of people on the last episode were like, hey, why didn't you give me the invite? Make sure you email me this time. So I'm going to email some extra people. And I always tell people, like, drop in when you want, however long you want. There's no, like, I wanted to be like a true hangout. And when you're hanging out with your boys, you got some, you know, the friend who's always late, who's going to show up late. You got the guy who always comes early, that you end up, you know, having some one-on-one time talking about some personal stuff. So it's like, I kind of want to, we all have those friends. And my vision was to kind of build that same thing, but with alternative media and researchers and interesting people. So that's kind of the goal. And it's growing fast. Like, a lot of people are growing in regards to, I mean, it's spread out everywhere. I let people post it wherever, so I don't know exactly what the analytics are on these specific shows, because it's open source. I tell everybody, like, put it where you want, anywhere you want. I don't care. Just get the conversations out there. But a lot of people who have been involved get a lot of positive feedback. We've been getting, you know, tons of positive feedback. So I think it probably is growing quickly, and hopefully it keeps growing, and we can keep doing this.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I discovered you and Midnight Mike through Sam and Charlie. We've had Charlie on too, and so
Oh, nice.
Yeah, when the unions first started popping up, then it was just like all these like different things, and now I'm into Monica Perez, and I get the propaganda report, and I'm always blown away by the research that Ryan and Whitney do over at Last American Vagabond. I'd be like afraid to type some of those things even into my search engines, let alone getting as deep as they get. But yeah, it's been great. It's been super informative, and it's opened so many different, you know, doors into different people creating content and stuff. So I love it, and I've been taking a deep dive. We'll have to get you back on some other time, because I really want to talk about Hunting Hitler. That's been my my focus the past couple days have been going balls deep on Gerard's stuff. But
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He probably, why don't you hit him up? He'd come on your show.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll write you a message. I'm trying to think which way that I get the fastest response from him, because certain guests, there's like a trick to him, because it's like, this dude never checks his email, and then I hit him up on Twitter and he gets back to me immediately, or this guy never checks his his Instagram message, and then I hit him up on email and he gets back, so it's like, but Gerard was like that, and I'll hit you up, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't on social media. It might have been an email, but either way, I'll get you his contact information. If he's an awesome dude, and I'm actually surprised he hasn't been on more shows, because he's such a intelligent guy, and it's such an intriguing topic, and he knows so much about it. I mean, this guy was hired, for that show, and was, when I had him on the first time, it was before that show even existed, and people were looking at me like, yeah, whatever, and now it's like pretty well known that there's no way he could have, he could have been in Germany and killed himself, So it's he's a very fascinating guy. You checked out the last interview he did on the show, or?
Yeah. And then I've just been searching up, so I found a couple other episodes. But yeah, I mean, I even though I was a special education teacher, I had a focus in history. And so I've always kind of just been like a bit of a history geek and stuff like that whole thing where he just up and vanished, and they planted bodies and tricked people into thinking that it turns out the one wasn't even a man, it was a woman, right? It was like a 40-year-old woman, so it wasn't even old enough to be his chick. And then
that's the thing about history that's fascinating, is that somebody could tell the same story over and over again. We all just believe somebody researched it and that it's factual, and nobody ever looks into it, because it's like, well, if everybody else is repeating it, it means somebody must have done their homework. Somebody must say, and then this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. And then you hear like there's Bavarian villages in Argentina and Chile, and you're like, wait, there's whole towns, cities in these countries where everyone speaks German and no one even speaks Spanish, like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, like you said, most people wouldn't even know that. I mean, it's pretty well established that people know that a lot of Nazi Germans went to Argentina. Like, why is it that hard to believe that Hitler made it there? I mean, the guy was he was advanced in his thinking, propaganda and military, and so many different strategies and things that he analyzed, and really was just focused on little details to try to get the upper hand. And he didn't have a escape plan. Like, that was like the one thing he didn't think out. Like, how do I get out of here? How do I escape? Like, to me, that seems like crazy. Like, he was advanced in so many other things. He was so well thought out. He understood how to control the country, how to control the crowds. He was even looking for UFOs to try to get it ahead and try to reverse engineer something possibly. And yet he didn't have an escape plan. I mean, that to me, that just seems silly. Like, why? Of course he would have an escape plan, you would think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it all goes back into just people just being glued to the black box and buying whatever comes out of that propaganda machine and taking that as the gospel. But yeah, Jim, why don't we get into the rapid fires?
All right. Ricky, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you take your coffee? How do you brew your coffee?
I've been really into, that super coffee. It was like two young dudes who it's like a ketogenic super coffee. It's called super coffee, and it's like a ketogenic coffee. Like, they wanted to make like a nutritional coffee that actually gave you energy. And it's like I think they were on like that show, what was that show with the owner of
Shark Tank?
Shark Tank. Yeah, they were on Shark Tank, and I think I didn't find out till afterwards, but I saw they have MCT oil. It's sweetened with monk fruit, and it's they make a cold, like, pretty delicious coffee, and they also make like K cups or whatnot. Back in the day, I was big into the Dave Asprey coffee, the Bulletproof coffee. I know people have mixed feelings about him, but his coffee was actually pretty good. So usually in this, I like iced coffees in the summer. Rarely do I like warm coffees unless it's like once it starts getting cold. But anytime the weather's halfway decent, it's much more refreshing to drink iced coffees.
And those guys, it comes in an iced coffee, like in a bottle.
Yeah, well, their coffee is you can just buy them. They're ready made, and they almost look like muscle milk containers that you can get at the gas station.
Okay.
And but it says super coffee and it has MCT oil, like 5 grams of I think organic whey protein, and it has like I don't know if it's 250 or maybe 300 milligrams of caffeine or something. So it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
And but I usually fast all day, so honestly, I've been skipping coffee a lot because I'm like just water till dinner time. But I do cheat sometimes. So like sometimes I'll do the Neuro Gum that has some caffeine in it. I'll do that if I'm a little down, or I'll just get a plain black coffee. I'll just get I like the nitro cold brews from Starbucks. I think they're probably the same value of a Ferrari because they're super expensive, but they're delicious and they're strong. I do like the nitro cold brews, but I like cold brew any coffee because they just taste better, less acid.
Yeah.
And on an empty stomach, it can cause some like gut issues if you have too much acid. People drinking coffee on an empty stomach is going to have gut health issues because of the acid. So it seems like on an empty stomach, the cold brew stuff is just I don't have any negative effects on it, and it's just more refreshing.
Cool. Are you a beer drinker?
No, I'm a whiskey drinker. Whiskey and wine. Yeah.
Okay. You have a favorite whiskey brand?
Yeah. So Woodford Reserve and Angel's Envy are my go-to. So Woodford would be like the stuff you can get at like just about any bar, any place. So that's like my go-to because it's one of the few ones that I like that are typical at restaurants and stuff. And then Angel's Envy is a little bit more expensive. But I love, and Angel's Envy's, they make a couple different ones. They make a rye also, but the one that I really like is a bourbon aged in port wine barrels. So it gives it like a little bit of a hint of something, but it's not sweet. It's not overwhelming. So you can still enjoy it like a whiskey. You don't feel like it's a infused or flavored whiskey. So those are my go-tos.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And wine, I like Red Zinfandel because it's strong. You can't find a Red Zinfandel that's under like 14.5% alcohol. They're all like 15%, 15.5%. And Redzin's like the little gem of wines that nobody's really into, but they're awesome. I love dark wine because it reminds me of like my dad's homemade wine and like all the Portuguese people I grew up with. And but it's dark, it's strong, and it just like I don't know. It just to me that's like one of the gems of wines. Like nobody ever says like their favorite wine's Red Zin. It's always like a Cab or Merlot or whatever. Yeah. But I love Red Zin. If you want to get messed up or lucky, get a bottle of Red Zin next time you have a date.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was such a thing. So I learned something new about wine today.
So forgive my choice of words, but what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
This is a tough one. I would have to say my favorite is 9/11 because it sounds like I'm like pro 9/11. 9/11 was awesome. No, but I say 9/11 because I think it was the most important one to my evolving and my understanding how the world works. I think it was probably one of the most important ones in regards to me. Like I don't think anything emotionally made me more passionate about wanting to do something than that specific one.
And when it comes to 9/11, what is one thing that you would suggest someone who maybe doesn't question 9/11 that they should look into?
I'll tell you which documentary they should watch. It's a very underrated documentary. It's Press for Truth, and it is by far one of the most important documentaries on 9/11. And the reason why that is because it's not a conspiracy documentary, but by the end of it, you will believe 9/11 was a conspiracy because it was about the 4 widows, actually the Jersey girls. I don't know if you guys know who they are. They're the Jersey girls. There were 4 widows who lost their husbands in the 9/11 attacks. There was no investigation into it. They forced the investigation. That's what some people don't know. Like the 9/11 commission report wasn't supposed to happen. Like, they didn't have any intentions in investigating it. They were actually already taking trucks loads of all the debris and getting it out of New York. But these women forced this commission to investigate and look into it. They're also the reason why Henry Kissinger wasn't on the head of the commission, because they found some links between some Middle Eastern families and some of his business interests, and eventually he had to step down. But they're just 4 widows who actually voted for Bush, I think the majority of them, who wanted to look into it, and they told their amazing story of how, like, information was suppressed, how everything was tainted in regards to the investigation. And it's just something that's easily digested because it's not speculation. It's not, I mean, this is all historic evidence. I mean, you could see them testifying. You can see, you could see them being interviewed on Fox News and CNN and whatever, and telling their stories. So it's pretty wild. I would say that's probably one of the best places to start. Have them watch that. And then if they really want to go down the rabbit hole, you watch the 4.5 hour, 9/11, A New Pearl Harbor, which is really long, and it's a really good one. But of course, James Corbett's done tons of great ones too. He's done War Games, 9/11 War Games, 9/11 Follow the Money. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but the 9/11 Suspects, another one. He's done a bunch of them, and he has that 5-minute video. Actually, maybe that's what I should have told you, that he has that 5-minute video. I don't know if either one of you guys watched. It was like his most popular out of all his videos. It was called 9/11, A Conspiracy Theory. And it's kind of a mockery of the idea that it was a conspiracy theory. And in 5 minutes, he explains like all these events and all the things that are silly to question in a humorous way. And so that's another really good one too. The 9/11 Conspiracy Theory by James Corbett.
Yeah, he's got a ton of good stuff out there. What you mentioned you're a musician and you produce your major intro for your song. What are you listening to right now? Music, podcast, audiobook? You have anything new that we should check out?
That's a good. It's funny. I used to ask people on my show questions like these, and I always thought they were easy. And now I'm like, what the hell? Well, I think in regards to podcasts, a lot of people have hit me up and said that thank you so much for bringing up the No Agenda podcast, because a lot of people weren't aware of that, because they kind of do their own thing. So you're not really going to run into their work by listening to Corbett or somebody else. But that's an amazing, amazing podcast. I'm trying to think in regards to, is it just alternative media? Anything like, or?
No, I mean, if you're not listening to alternative media, what do you like? All right, when you're rocking out, like going to the gym in the morning, what are you listening to? What's in your headphones?
Yeah, well, a lot of the bands I grew up with, like Fear Factory, and a lot of the bands that, I like, Cell Dweller, Gravity Kills, some of the older stuff. But I like a lot of stuff from the metalcore scene in regards to like The Devil Wears Prada. I'm still a fan of, and a lot of Under Oath. Some of those bands I still listen. Like Low Key is a UK artist I really like. UK has a lot of artists I like. Enter Shikari, they used to be a band I like, but now they kind of soften up a little bit, and I've kind of lost a little bit of interest. But Architects is another one. Architects is nasty, and they're like kind of political. They definitely have like much more meaning in their words, and what they're trying to say in their music. I mean, in regards to watching TV, if I'm not watching like documentaries and stuff like that, I got to find something to watch with the wife that we can all agree on. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, so recently we've been watching the All or Nothing documentary on the Hotspurs, and then we watched what else have we been watching? We watched a lot of WWE stuff because the kids love WWE.
You just entered my wheelhouse, dog.
This thing is, I grew up watching it, right? And because when you're a foreigner, the only thing you can watch with your kids, like my parents could watch with us when we were kids, that we could all understand. I didn't even pick up on that. And was WWE, because my parents could enjoy it. I could enjoy it. There's no needing to translate or anything. You kind of knew who the big bad guy was, who the heel was, who's the good guy. So we grew up watching it. Then I got out of it like forever. And then when the lockdown happened, we got the WWE network. and we went down a rabbit hole, and now like my wife's addicted to it. The kids like are like WWE historians. Like they
Yes.
talk about so many like events and fights and rivalries and like historic things that happened in WWE that they weren't even like in some cases I wasn't even alive, you know, and or I was a kid and I wasn't watching it yet, and they know about like just so, you know, oh, remember the time when Jake the Snake, speaking of Macho Man, his snake bit Macho Man, and, you know, they'll be bringing this stuff up. And it was just like, it's crazy because it's like we went like 3 months where like that's all there was to watch. So we just binge watched and went back and watched all the things I grew up on, and then got to know some of the newer characters that are in there now. So we're kind of all caught up now. And, but yeah, so that's another thing we watch a lot. Like I play soccer Sunday nights. The one time I miss soccer, and everybody knows, is when there's a WWE pay-per-view, because my kids make me stay home and watch it with them. So I can't go to soccer. So they know, oh, you know, like, you know, Royal Rumble's a Sunday, Rick's not showing up, you know, it's like, so it's but it is something that like, I get it. You know, it's one of those things where I appreciate the fact that it's something the whole family can watch, and like I'm not torturing the kids by watching something like I try watching the Tottenham documentary with them because they're big soccer fans and sports fans, but they got bored with it, you know. So, and then if we watch something the kids like, I might get bored with it. But wrestling's like that happy medium where like everybody can kind of enjoy it, you know. So it's yeah, it's a blast, and it's funny because we always joke around about how. You know, I've said it. I don't know if I've said it on the air, but how like, you know, the kids are mad that I'm missing Monday Night Raw for these Union of the Unwanted shows, because it's always like, you know, I miss like the first hour of Raw, you know. But it's fun. It really is fun. So you still watch it, Jim?
Yeah, I am. We actually just rebooted. Me and my cousin and my friend, we just rebooted our wrestling podcast. But I'm a huge mark. Like I'm in school for film and television, and I want to get into the production side of pro wrestling. I'm really into AEW right now. It's more kind of for
Did
the
you grow
older...
up? Yeah.
What were you say?
I was gonna say, yeah. I was gonna say, well, I was a big ECW fan.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I see, yeah, we were like Rob Van Dam. I've been trying to get Rob Van Dam on my show for a while. Sabu, Terry Funk, the Sandman, all that stuff. It's like
Chris Candido, the franchise.
Dude, the Dudley Boys, you know, I mean, they gave a lot of those guys, we're going to nerd out on some wrestling. They gave a lot of those guys like the stardom, like, you know, a lot of those guys, Taz and all those guys that left, you know, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, they all started in ECW.
Yep.
You know, that was their big platform. And then eventually got bought out by like, you know, WCW or the other big ones. But, yeah, I mean, he had this vision of that's what messed up was the mess up was like not keeping honest to their brand. Like, you know, this idea of like, because they were, when they had like every fight was no hold bars, like extreme, and when you were like doing regular fights and you're calling it ECW, it's like, oh, I don't buy it, you know. It's like, this is an ECW, it doesn't feel like ECW. But even today, something crazy happens during a wrestling event, it doesn't matter which one you're watching. Somebody says it, you know. It's funny because we say it, we're watching, we say ECW because my kids. So when we first got into WWE, yeah, so you love ECW, right? And I remember the first, and AEW is pretty good too, right? They can't even hear you guys, so they didn't even know we were talking about this. I can only hear you through this. But so they're true fans. Who's your favorite wrestler? Becky Lynch. Who's your favorite wrestler? Randy Orton. Randy Orton's pretty badass. I will say he's done his time. He's been. You like Brock Lesnar too? Yeah, he's pretty good, right?
I like
John Cena. Remember that time Rob Van Dam kicked his butt in front of everybody?
Oh, yeah, I hate him.
You know what's funny? So remember? Do you remember when John Cena fought Rob Van Dam in that? What was it like? That like that
he was a one night stand, right?
Yes, the ECW one night stand. So we love that because, you know, John Cena was so not ECW, right?
Yeah.
Even though he actually went to college right down the street from where I live. He went to Springfield.
Right?
I went to Springfield.
Oh, you went to Springfield College?
I didn't graduate. I went there for a year and then I transferred. But yeah, I went to Springfield.
Oh, that's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Gee, I'm gonna don't touch that. I can hear it. And And yeah, so we watched that fight, and we were just, I was telling my kids, I'm like, you guys are gonna never see people disrespect John Cena like you're gonna see in this fight. I'm like, they throw his shirt back. So so it was one of those things where like now like my son Ricardo is always like, oh yeah, John Cena stinks. He's boring. He's because I remember when we watched it for the first time when I went back and watched it with him. He's like, who do you want to win? Because you kind of like John Cena. I'm like, yeah, he's kind of a local boy, so I'm like, I can root for him a little bit. But I'm like, I love Rob Van Dam and ECW, so screw John Cena in this fight. And then so we when we watched it, it was just hysterical because then now he's just like, yeah, John Cena is boring. He does do the same stuff all the time. I guess I don't like John Cena, So that now they're but it's yeah, it's hilarious just watching.
Dad, do you know who I like, Alessia?
Who?
The ultimate one. Why you want to finish this one?
She loves the microphone, as you can tell. It's not hard to get her talk.
Hi,
Similar to her dad. I cursed her. She has my genes. You want to hear? You can hear a little bit.
Since we're on
Here,
the
I can do this.
topic of pro wrestling, I won't narrow you down to one, but if you had to list your top 5 or maybe your favorite back then and your favorite now, who would it be?
So you got I
can't hear them.
wait because I'll do it. Hold on a second. And because so I think Rob Van Dam is definitely one of my favorites because he was one of the first ones that I fell in love with at ECW, and I'm just like, dude, I've never seen a guy who's that athletic, and it's like he was like one of those wrestlers that I'm like, dude, he could like seriously kick ass regardless, and he was like in the Guinness Book of World Records, sorry, kicking butt. Are you guys think I'm on a kid show? and then I think Stone Cold because he's another one.
I'm not doing it.
And then you got
I'm not doing it.
oh no, don't do the middle fingers. And then and then let me see who else. My all-time favorites.
Sabu.
Yeah, I like Sabu, but I'm trying to think people who were probably bigger in WCW and ECW. I mean, Oh, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy. The Hardy Boys are definitely, Oh, Kane. Yeah, just see, I respect who? Undertaker. Yeah, so I would say like Stone Cold, the Hardy Boys, Rob Van Dam. Triple H.
The Hardy Boys are too good for me.
Because this is the thing is I really appreciate, especially somebody who plays sports and stuff like that. I really appreciate people who get hurt and play and go on with the show like Triple H did when he had that thing in his leg against Mick Foley.
Yeah, that was crazy how he finished that match, and I'm in the same boat as you. I might not appreciate Triple H in the political sense of how he works around wrestling, but the fact that he finished that match and came back, and he's still wrestling, and every year at WrestleMania, that my man is looking jacked. So I'll give him dabs on that for sure.
And he could take the shortcut. He doesn't have to put his body through all that. I mean, he was married into the family, so it's like he didn't have to keep wrestling. He didn't have to keep, taking a beating. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
Who?
Triple H.
Why? He's fighting right now. He should be fighting on Monday Night Raw.
Maybe.
So, not to get off the wrestling topic, but I got one more for you. Do you have any sort of daily practice or daily rituals that you do to kind of level up or set yourself up for success every day?
Yeah, so I go to the gym every morning before work, and just about every day. Like I'll give myself a rest day, 1 or 2 max, because it's like this weird thing where like if I take a day off, even like when I feel like I need a day off, let me get some rest. I don't go to the gym. I don't do anything real physical, and I feel like crap all day, and I feel like mentally I'm not stimulated, like cognitively I'm like not there yet, and so it seems like going to the gym in the morning is like the key to like starting off.
Go, Rich.
My only other
definitely
question would be is how does a guy living in Massachusetts walk around with the Dallas Mavericks jersey on?
Because on the back of this Dallas Maverick jersey is Dirk Nowitzki,
Oh,
a fellow
okay.
European and probably the best European ever to play basketball, I would say.
Respect.
I just love his story. He's one of those stand-up guys where, but believe me, tomorrow for the Celtics game, I'll be wearing a Celtics jersey.
Right on.
Sweet.
Yeah, hold on.
Well,
Okay.
Ricky, thank you so much for your time. you're even higher up there on my list now that I know you watch pro wrestling.
You made his day.
Yeah, you made my day for real. So thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And before we end this conversation, where can the people find you? Where can they search podcasts? Where can they find all the content you're putting out there?
Yeah, go check. They can get my show www.therippleeffectpodcast.com. You'll have links to all my stuff, from my merchandise store to my YouTube channel and all that stuff. But you can also find, just search Ripple Effect Podcast. You can find it on YouTube, but the channel is RV Theory 6. That's also my Twitter handle, my Parlor handle. Wait, gee, I'm saying something important. And my Parlor handle. Okay, yeah, I can say it later. I can't say it later. Here. And then so it's RV Theory 6 on Parlor and Instagram, YouTube, and then just the rippleeffectpodcast.com. That's I gotta hear the response. Tell me what they say. That's good feedback. Okay, let it. I just need to say bye, and then we're good. Then we can go upstairs. Okay. Oh, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry about that.
No,
Sorry about all the extra
we
editing
love
you guys
to
have to do.
it. It's actually, yeah, we had been doing it for a while, and then last year, about a year and a half ago, got access to an actual studio on a college campus, and so that's what allowed us to be pretty consistent for a long time. And then the Zoom opened up, kind of talking about the good things that come out of the lockdown. And the lockdown has allowed us to connect with a lot more people, because I think a lot of us have had just more downtime, and people are more open and willing to have conversations. So it's allowed us to get in touch with guys like you and Charlie and Pat and some of the other guys. So thank you very much for your time. Tell everyone at the Union of the Unwanted that the Airey Bros are listening and are fans. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Ricky. It's been an honor and a pleasure getting to chat with you and go all over the place. I didn't think we were going to talk about professional wrestling, but hey, that's the beauty of a conversation, is just goes all these different places. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me, and hopefully we'll chat again in the future.
Definitely. Have a great night. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Take care.
Take care.